Hi,
Hey P, how are you?
I'm doing well, Yvette. How are you?
Good, good.
We in this global conversations, you know, I have this
You're looking
uh,
beautiful today. I love that flower in your hair.
thank you. When the community in the city can give you a little something when you're walking, it's a beautiful thing, right?
Nature gives you everything. Nature always
Nature gives you
cares.
everything when you're walking amongst the trash and the
Mhm.
garbage and the everything else that's going on, right?
Well, that brings me right into bloom where you planted, right? The rose that
It's
grows
when
in
we planted it.
concrete.
Right. So we're gonna give people a little bit more time before they get in. I put my glasses on so I could see, but that's okay. We're right here, right? I look at it and I say to myself, it's hot and it's cold in Cape Town.
It is
So it's very
freezing in
interesting.
Cape Town. Happy winter solstice. We just passed the solstice. It's cold. The days are just about as short as it can get. But we're very
Yes.
blessed. It's a La Nina year, so we're getting the rain. We have winter rainfall here, so
Oh,
it's
okay.
raining
That's
beautifully. Everything's green. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
It's
and everything grows, right? So this is time when things are growing, people are growing, food's growing,
That's right.
animals are growing.
That's right. So I'm very happy. Every year when the winter rains come, then I'm grateful. So P, you disappearing on me. I just
And
you disappeared for a few minutes. Now you're back.
okay, I'm here.
Okay.
So yeah.
So maybe that should bring us right to the start of we are doing a podcast. Congratulations, Poet on Watch. Congratulations, Yvette. We are managing to do a podcast.
Yeah. We managed to get in. Thank you for Zoom. Thank you to Zoom for allowing the communication to happen, right?
Exactly, exactly. Thank you, Tuzu.
Yeah.
And maybe I
And
want to
thank you.
explain a little that we were curious about. Is it going to work? Hey, Jolene, welcome.
Right.
Is
Is
it,
it gonna work?
is it going to
That's
work to do a podcast? Does it really work? Is it true? Is this promise of the internet world true that you can be an organic farmer or an urban farmer somewhere without any money, and all you got is internet and some power, and still you manage to enable a global conversation? What do you think, P?
yeah. I mean, so let's start talking about what it is that we're really connecting on. And so you and I connected through food. You and I connected through literature. You and I have connected through uh movies. You and I have used this source of communication as a way to really work out some things. And so I think that with inside that reality, and as more and more people move towards internet, I've been on this internet situation for over 15 years. I was like, I'm giving it a break. Where people are now just starting to get on to the internet and say, oh, yeah, we're gonna use it. Yeah, and they're using it for whatever they need to use it for, right? But I've always used it for my poetry, always used it for a way to really sort out some personal issues. And I guess food is one of them.
Well, that's kind of why I said let's do a podcast because I'm curious to for me and as you know my background is an academic and I'm going to introduce myself in a second, but for me it's very much an experiment. Can this really work? Or is this whole internet global communication thing, is it something just for rich and privileged people in the global north, or can I genuinely sit on an organic farm right on the southernmost tip of Africa? I mean, the sea's right behind me, um, and have a voice. and have a say.
Right.
So for
And
me,
that,
this is highly experimental. Like, is this going to work? Is this how we manage to bring Black women's voices, African women's voices, queer women's voices, Indigenous women's voices into the global conversation? Or is this just going to be yet another of these promises that never really deliver? So that's why this podcast, in case you wondered. Let me just go on to introduce myself for everybody who doesn't know me. So I'm Dr. Yvette Abrams. I'm an economic historian by training, but these days I'm an organic farmer and a traditional healer. I am Indigenous by descent. I am a third-generation genocide survivor on my mother's side, and my father's people came here during the period of slavery. So that's who I am, and that's what I do. That's what I'm about. And just to introduce my partner, P, poet on watch, one of our most skilled and experienced multimedia artists. P has published 4 books of poetry. She has 4 films to her name, 3 CDs. But I think what I love most about P is her work as a photographer. P spent 8 years working for the NBC as a camera person. And to this day, no matter where, no matter what, P always gets the shot. So over to you, P. You want to tell people who you are? Hey, Shyam, welcome,
yeah,
welcome.
my name is Poet on Watch. I'm a multimedia artist. I've traveled back and forth to South Africa for the past now 8 years. And in my travels, it was because of the fact that I needed something to heal my eczema, right? And I found that Yvette could actually make something from the land that could heal my eczema, and I didn't have to take drugs and pills and all types of things to heal the way they do it here in the United States. That I could really heal just from the ground and from the farm. But I kind of knew that because my dad's a farmer, and we grew up in. My dad had us going back and forth from Mount Vernon, New York, to Georgia, Reidsville, Georgia, and my people were Georgians, and they also had a situation where, yeah, it was beautiful. We grew up on food, and so when we moved into the city, we still grew food. So I understood her as a farmer because I was also a farmer, but a farmer in a city perspective. Because when you're in a city, you don't have any land. You have a roof, you have some concrete, you have things going around. But we had a little, we had a walnut tree, we had some berries growing, and we had a little land on the side. So when we had a little land on the side, my dad was like, "God, I'll go out there and grow some food," because he was from Georgia. So regardless of what we were going to do, we were going to grow food all the time. So I learned how to grow food at a very young age. And in growing food, I said, oh, it never left me, right? So anytime I needed to heal from something, I grew a plant. Anytime, I remember when I was in elementary school and I was in 6th grade, and I was always kind of a vocal person, and my teacher actually slammed my fingers in the door, right? And that's, I guess, when I figured out racism was real. And but what made me not just get into a rage of passion, I ended up growing plants from that. And so growing plants, it got me over my anger. And so when I noticed that being able to be in the ground, being able to be close to the soil, being able to regenerate the energy through the soil and back into yourself without any shoes on, that really healed me. So as I went through the years of me now being a grown woman, I'm not going to say my age, but I'm a grown woman now. So being a grown woman and realizing how food was a really important to the source of healing, right? And land is the source of healing. And when I ended up in Newark, New Jersey, I was kind of on the outside of Newark for a minute, in East Orange, Orange, West Orange, and I'm in all these places. But I said, oh, let me move into the city of Newark. And I realized, whoa, it's a whole different situation in Newark. People are not growing any food. And Newark is one of the #1 food deserts in the United States. And if we don't know what a food desert is, we can have sugar and candy and all these little convenience stores and all these little places where we're going. We can have all that stuff happening, right? But that's not food. And then you wonder why you're gaining so much weight. And then you're wondering why, you're dying for diabetes. And you're wondering why you got high blood pressure. You're wondering why your skin is breaking out from eczema. Well, in Cape Town, they call it psoriasis, right? So you're wondering why you have all this going on. It's because you're not putting the right food in your system
Exactly.
or drinking water.
Exactly.
Right?
So
drinking water.
Welcome.
But if we're in a situation where um if we're in a situation where food I'm sorry, I don't if we're in a situation where food and water, like Newark, New Jersey, water is disgusting. Like we have no water here.
Sorry,
Right?
Pete. I just want to introduce our guest who just arrived.
Okay, great.
And then we can get back into it, because yes, this particular podcast today, it's about food and water in a food desert.
In a food desert.
Gogo Solomon, welcome, welcome. You can unmute your mic. I
Hey,
I
Thokozani, Gogo,
and
Thokozani. Hello, everybody.
thank you so much for making yourself available for this podcast. I've looked so much forward to having you.
Thokozani.
Yeah, thank you for putting your family aside for 1/2 hour and joining us. So for those of you who don't know, this is Fikile Vilakazi Alberts. She holds 2 PhDs. We should actually call her Dr. Fikile Vilakazi Alberts. She is also a traditional healer known as Gogo Solomon. Welcome, welcome, Gogo Solomon. She is a director at the Gender Equity Unit at the University of the Western Cape, where I myself worked about 20 years ago. So lovely to see a new generation coming up and standing on our shoulders, even more powerful and even more impactful than we could even dream of being. Fikile is also chair of the Traditional Healers Council, appointed by the Minister of Health. And last but not least, Fikile is my comrade and colleague and leader of Ikwelo Healers Collective, our Healers Collective. So she's somebody I've known and worked with for many years, and delightfully so. She's a hard worker. She's not scared of leadership. She does what needs to be done. Always in this introduction, Alex, could you mute your mic, please? I always try and say something personal about the people that I introduce, and what I can say about Fikile is that she's a survivor of the queer genocide. So if you know, from about 2009 to 2016, they were trying to exterminate every queer in this country, and Fikile at the time was director of an NGO, and those poor directors of NGOs, people could not have a funeral without calling them. So Fikile may look like a daisy, but she's a person who is tough down to the core. Welcome, Fikile. Do you want to say a few words just to introduce yourself?
Thokozani, Gogo Thokozani Makosi. I just want to say really thank you for inviting us here. We are so honored and humbled to be a part of this collective. And you have said a mouthful, Gogo, about me. I don't have much to say to introduce myself, except that I'm really happy that I've been able to turn up and be with us all, and just want to be part of the contribution of the conversation, especially about healing and food and everything else that we put into our bodies. And yeah, so I'm really honored to be here.
Thank
Makosa
you.
makulu thokozako.
Tokozani. And Fikile, you are also a very well-known political commentator, commenting on all our national news stations. So the $1,000,000 question, what is your take on elections and the government of national unity, especially as it relates to land and food? What do
And
you
say? Before we get to that, can we introduce our guests on our side? So we have Alex, he's here.
Oh, hello.
Introduce yourself, sir.
Yes, hello. Yes. I'm just a passerby to meet Miss POW about her, and we just happen to talk about food insecurity, about the things that affect us locally here in the United States, politically, and also just in terms of nutrition, what is needed for the body.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Welcome, welcome, Alex. Great to see you.
And I think the reason why me and Alex kind of connected was because we were in the street. So like with here in the United States, sometimes we don't know people, but we know people when we meet them. And when I met him, we instantly connected. And I said, "What do you talk about?" And he's a young man. This is a young man. And I said, we started talking about food. He was like, "Yes, food." I was like, "What? Okay, you're on the show." And this is how we connected. And sometimes when I connect with my guests, I like to connect with them in a very random.
And there P froze again. Like I say, this is an experiment. Can black women talk on the internet? You disappeared again and now you're back.
Yeah, see, when we start talking about powerful stuff like introducing people, how
That's
spiritual,
right. We
how
barely even
spiritual stuff,
started. We barely even started.
we barely even started, but we about to crank it up.
And
So
we're
let's
about
get
to crank
started.
it up. Can we bring in
Yeah,
Fikile now? And then you can ask your guest a question. Fikile, are you
I
ready to
will.
ask?
Yes, I am ready, Gogo. I just want to share with our fellow healers and colleagues and loved ones that South Africa is just, in the middle of putting a new government in place. And one of the things that really is at the center of the food politics is the question of land. Our accessibility to land, our relationship with land and Mother Earth, and how really politicians relate to that. And I think at the center of that conversation is just the memory of who we are as a people, pushing for those things. Like Coco Yvette was saying, that many of us are healers, but we also are activists. We see ourselves as a militant voice in this conversation that constantly says, let us remember who we are. Let us remember who we, why we are here at this point in time. And I think for Africa, it's happening at the time when the agenda of healing can no longer really be divorced from our relationship with land and returning back to that. And I just wanted to bring that out, Gogo Yvette, to say I think what is important for this upcoming government is to really then foreground the role of healers, first and foremost. We have been in many conversations with Gogo Yvette and many healers in South Africa where we are saying South Africa is moving into a place where what we're calling a revolution of food, just the decisions about what we put in our bodies, how we grow our own food, needs to be relocated into the hands of those of us who are calling ourselves healers. Because I think many of us relate to earth differently. And what that basically means simply is just the things we spoke about, P. Growing our own food and making sure that our own food is not necessarily in the hands of for lack of a better word, in the hands of those who have no respect for humanity and simple things like Ubuntu in our context. And I think Ubuntu is a context, is a phenomena that really relates to everybody else. So literally growing the kind of food from the place of love, knowing that what we eat is actually what shapes love and loving and just a sense of being human and being in community, which means then even the manner in which that we grow food is not just about one particular individual having accessibility to a seed that grows food, but that we enable through governance. And I think our emphasis is that, we are not necessarily talking about accessibility to land away from the systems of governance, but because we are politicians ourselves, we are political activists ourselves, we are growers of food ourselves, we are keepers of the land ourselves, we are keepers of the seed ourselves. So we know what we're talking about. And this cannot happen without us on the table because because the agenda has got to center and foreground that conversation. And honestly speaking, that conversation is sitting in all of us. It needs all of us on the table. Food heals us. We need to decide really how we then grow it, how it even ends up to be on the shelves, from the place of consumption. because consumption is something that is deeply spiritual. We eat that which we love, and we grow that which we love. And I think it's important that those values are spiritually embedded even in what we consume. Even up to water. In South Africa, we buy water today. We buy literally everything, things we never used to buy, things that Mother Nature gives for free. Nothing wrong with buying. I think that the value of money is something that we're talking about. Is it possible that we can have conversations, Gogo Yvette, about land and seed and food in a manner that promotes a chain of business that is also respecting those values of love and loving each other in a sense of community. So that's what I'm bringing here to say. Perhaps we need to go back to that place, and just really structure systems of governance in a manner that they are able to take us back to the land. They're able to maximize our being in the land. And that means reorganizing even what we're calling work. Because work is home, work is in the land, work is on the footsteps, and then of course what you put on the soil is what becomes food that we all eat. And I'm hoping that I'm making sense, but that's
Perfect.
that would be my
Making a lot of sense to me.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Over to you, P. What's your question?
Okay, well, my question is, I've been back and forth to South Africa, and I realized that there's a lot of land there that we don't have here in Newark, New Jersey. And I don't see people planting food. I don't see people planting. They're looking at, oh, I need my own land. I need my own land. But I'm like, there's land right down the street. Why are you not planting? So I guess my question is, what makes people hesitant about planting food? Ficola, that's my question.
The question, the question is, what is it that makes people not to really grow land, grow food in the land that we have? Because it's massive.
Yeah, around the land that they have. I think that sometimes that people don't feel like the land that they see in front of them is land. I'm like, yeah, that's land. Why aren't you growing something?
And I think it's that kind of it's psyche, because we really emerge from systems of oppression. Our relationship with land sort of been reorganized. And I don't know if you know here about the process of dispossession of land for South Africans. It happened in 1913. So what happened is that in 1913, South Africa, under the apartheid government, had a system of dispossession of land where the majority of people were moved away from, places of residence, even just the idea of ownership of land. And what then was put in place is that majority were not allowed to own the state of our psyche since 1913. So then our relationship with land was sort of rearranged. So when you see your pavement, you actually see something that you don't own. When and when I'm talking about ownership in this particular case, no, all of us should actually be, this land belongs to all of us. We should be able to grow everywhere we are. And I'll tell you an anecdote, Gogo Yvette. I don't know if you're aware that there's someone in Soweto. Soweto is a township who was arrested because they planted cabbages on their pavement, right? Like, when the way the structures of our housing is like, you just have a portion of land becomes part of your pavement. People in South Africa currently are not allowed to plant on the pavements, and that's the nature of our legislation, which is something that really we've inherited from that system of oppression, of colonization and apartheid. So what then has happened and colleagues is that the government of democracy tried to introduce land reform processes, policies, and programs to remind all of us that this land is ours, and some portions of land then were given back in some way. But you find that I think somewhere in our psyche we still have that kind of a relationship with land that says it's not ours, we can't own it. And in fact, it's never really handed into the hands of the people, but it's been given to chiefs and traditional leadership, who also in their psyche were given a sense of entitlement to say, if you're a king or a chief and you're a custodian of this land, then you decide what happens in this land. And that has meant that a lot of people are marginalized, right? A lot of citizens, even when you live in your own house, you still really don't have a sense of saying, I can grow my own food here. So we have been socialized politically, psychologically, and otherwise, and spiritually, to say we have to go and buy food at Checkers and go and buy food at Pick and Pay, whereas we live this Arabic. And what has happened in the movement of people and land, the majority then were placed in places that are not where you could necessarily not be able to grow food properly. So there's been a lot of that here. And that has meant that South Africans, we need to then go back, and that is the thing of returning to our souls and saying, this is who we are, and this is our relationship with land. We are farmers, we are growers. When people came here in 1913, they found us growing food for ourselves. They found us really having a particular relationship, even with animals and trees and plants and so on. But somehow we have forgotten that, or some of us, even if we have not forgotten, I think fear has alienated us from that relationship with land. And I think it's that spiritual place that even our spiritualities are which are highly deeply embedded in land. I'm sitting here on the floor, on the ground now at the ocean, Gogo Yvette, as I was mentioning to you, just really feeling beautiful here, because we all should be able to do that. Just enjoying the sound of the ocean where I am, sound of birds and so on. Why is it grow? That kind of thing, say, it's been a violent dispossession of a people. And I don't have any better word to say it, and I don't want to sound like a prophet of doom, but it's been a highly, deeply systemic, violent dispossession of a people and dismembering of the soul, the body, the spirit, and the land, and the relationship that is to that which we call food, and that which we call spinach, or just alu, or just umhlonyani, or just buchu, if you're in the Cape, and those kinds of things. Some of us are already going back to that place to say, to grow and so on. And even as we do that, we contested terrain.
No,
But
absolutely,
we are hopeful
Fikile.
that as many of us, yeah, so I can stop here just to give others a chance because of time.
Yes, unfortunately, we're on this free Zoom, and it's going to chuck us out in exactly 15 minutes. But I think it's good also, because podcasts should be snappy. But you can see that once we start getting into food and land and the spirituality and the history, really, we could take hours. So we're hoping that you all will come back for this conversation.
Yes.
But I just wanted to agree with you, Fikile, that if I want to diagnose South Africans, I would say we're still suffering from the spiritual after effects of land dispossession. We all, in a way, we're stuck in that trauma vortex. And that's why, you can come here from the USA and look at ways and say, but why aren't you helping yourself? And I would kind of say, well, because we're still dealing with the trauma. I'm going to give Alex a chance. Alex, what makes you so passionate about food? And do you see any commonalities between our history and yours?
Yes, many. And a lot of it in the US would have to do with what is life like after an eviction? What is life like when one is transient? One does not have a home. What is life like when one is on the food assistance programs that allows one to purchase food while they're in lieu of getting a better job or improving the economic standing? Oftentimes, we find ourselves in the United States, questioning what we should give up in terms of what foods that we eat, just so that we can stretch our food stamps up for the whole month if we're on such a program, or if we're moving from home to home and we're unable to cook our food because we're living in a shelter, how we're going to be able to get our nutrition in the first place, because our foods are going to be packaged, because that's the safest to survive when you're living on the street. And because that is a majority of the urban population, I would say, that's, that I come into contact with. That's the question that they ask. There needs to be something that would make up for that in our urban communities, even though, we see that the United States is, called the land of milk and honey, and, some of us are still yet to experience that. So finding different avenues of food pantries and speaking with different food pantry directors about what programs could be in place so that certain nutritional programs would be more beneficial to people that are in such a position. That's something that is of great interest to me. And of course, having had that experience in Newark, it's something that I was a great conversation with this POW, this Code on Watch, and that's, I guess, what sparked our love and our interest of nutrition, our discussion about this, which invited me to this podcast. So
Yeah. I mean, because I think, Alex, that what drove me to you was the fact that we were talking about food, right? And we were talking about, you were coming to Newark, where I thought Newark was a food desert, but where you are, it had no food. So tell them about where you came from.
Yes. So originally I'm from Atlantic City, and Atlantic City is an area that, it's a tourist town, it's a casino-driven town, and speaking again to the homeless population there's a large homeless population there, and the food pantries there are basically subsidizing the food that Wawa and other small restaurants are not selling, which are like waffles and sausage, egg and sausage sandwiches, and they're not really giving any oranges, grapes, or anything that's grown out of the ground to the people that may need that, that are in such a situation. So that was the food desert that I come from. And although Atlantic City is my hometown, I didn't grow up there. I grew up in Germany. So having grown up in Germany and seeing, the big difference between how grown food is treated a certain way in Germany as opposed to how grown food is treated in the US, this was a great disturbance to me, having come to, my home state and my hometown, and seeing that a lot of people are not getting the nutritional needs. I know when my grandmother, she has a barbecue, the first thing that she goes to is pizza and wings. It's never like, what, fruit bouquet can we get, or what, fruits can we squeeze for a smoothie or anything like that, because that's just not the convenience that comes to mind for most Americans. And when I make those suggestions, it's like, oh, here comes the foreigner making those suggestions. So I recognize that it's also a cultural thing. It's the way that we've been, I guess, um, socialized into this form of nutrition or malnutrition, so to speak.
Right, the lack of nutrition. And we think that we have food and we don't. And I think that when people come to the United States, they say, oh, Americans have money. Oh, Americans have this, Americans have that. And I'm saying, no, in actuality, we're all the same. Like, we're all, Yvette and I were just talking about what is Black. And is Black really a consciousness, or Black is a color? Because if Black is a color, then we're on something else, but that's a whole nother conversation.
That's a
so we're talking about
whole other conversation.
That's a whole other conversation, but we're talking about the consciousness of what it takes to grow, right? And what it takes to grow is to have nutrition, to have water, to have land. That's what it takes to grow. And when you're out of lack of that, right? Because, oh, you think you have a car. Oh, I have a house. Oh, I have these clothes. Oh, I'm wearing Nikes, right? So if you think you have all of this, when I go to Africa, I'm like, oh, you want some Nikes? Okay, here's the Nikes, and let me get the chains and the necklaces and let me get that, right? And so I'm like, it's a very different consciousness in how we think, as globally how we think, right? And so
we've got 5 minutes left, and I do
we got 5 minutes.
We do want to give our guests 1 minute each. Fikile,
yes,
just quickly, because we have you here. I mean, we obviously cannot pass a podcast and talk about food without thinking about the people in Gaza and Palestine and the children who are eating at this very moment. So quickly, our government of national unity, what do you think is going to happen to our foreign policy and Palestine in particular?
Our stance is very clear on Palestine. I mean, in fact, it's government stance, because we have been pro the people of Palestine and supporting the people of Palestine, but there are challenges and concerns now with the government of national unity. As we know that the Democratic Alliance is pro-Zionist, they are supporting Israel, and I think there's concerns that if we are going to see those things being compromised, it means the people of Palestine are likely to be compromised. We're talking about things like basic nutrition and food for the people in the camps and the people in Gaza. So that's the one concern that we have, and we are hoping that that our policy stance in terms of foreign policy is not compromised for that. And we just have to see in the next couple of days if that is the case. But I think if there's a message, we need to put out clear to this government of national unity. We cannot compromise the people of Palestine. We come from there. We know what it is to be marginalized. We know what it is to be treated differently on the grounds of racism. And we cannot go back there, at least not even for the people of Palestine. We are Palestine, and I think we need to defend that foreign policy with all that we have as a country, even during this government of national unity.
Alex, what's going to happen in Palestine and Congo? Because Congo got a whole other situation going on.
Yes, Congo, the difference between Congo and Palestine is that there's national resources that Congo, I guess, will have to, sit down and decide how they're going to, humanize the process of delivering these material goods that our big tech companies use for our phones, for our laptops. And they're going to have to decide, what side of humanity do we fall on? Do we fall on the side of profits, or do we fall on the side of the PROPHE, which is predicting a future that if we don't fix this issue, that we will be further enslaving a new generation of people. In Palestine, on the other hand, we have a crisis of faith. Is our faith in humanity, or is it our faith in ideals that cannot be realized other than through the mutual assured destruction of our human brethren? And I think that, slowly but surely, people are pulling back from the precipice, and they're saying, I believe in God, but I don't believe that we should believe in God at the expense of our fellow humans. This is where you hear on the right-wing channel circuits here in America, people are saying, well, yes, Palestinians are Christians, as if the Christian allegiance is what substantiates the human Palestinian people. So with that consciousness slowly awakening here in America, I think that people are slowly coming to understand that, yes, there's nebulous identities that we can assign to these issues and find humanity as opposed to further marginalizing one another because we have a difference of faith. And I hope that is the conclusion that we come to much faster than the war cabinets of Lebanon, considering war with Israel and things of that nature. So let's wait for the best.
Thank you very much, Alex. We have 2 minutes left, and I do have to remind
let's close it, Yvette.
To like. I'm closing. I have to remind our audience to like, to subscribe, to donate to Patreon. Can two organic farmers really make any money on the organic farm by doing podcasts? That's what we're busy trying to find out. P, over to you. You've got 1 minute to close. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
The way I like to lay it down is like this: eat healthy, drink good water, and pass on good energy to people, right? So when we do that, we sit down at a table of food. When we do that, right? We say we're going to invite some people over. And so not macaroni and cheese, y'all. I don't want to see that on the table every time I show up. So let's talk about that. Let's make sure that we got inner city knowledge around how we're eating healthy. Not just picking up a hamburger or a hot dog or something, picking up some fruit that has seeds in it. Because in this area, they're taking the seeds out of the food, y'all. So as we get deeper, we could get deeper into this conversation around food. When you don't say, I don't want these seeds in my watermelon.
Granddaddy Zoom about to cut you off, but watermelon, a perfect place to end with a prayer that all the people in Palestine, Gaza, Congo, and the world over have enough food and water to eat today. Thank you, everybody. This was
Thank you, y'all.
Thank you for showing up. 6th of July, we'll be back. We'll be back on the 6th of July with another.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, one love, everybody.
Love
and light.
Love and light. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Hug, hug.
Okay. Okay, Yvette, as before they cut us off, we finished ending